Texas A&M football is finally back, folks. And boy, do these times feel special. For the Aggies, it's turning the page on an old era, one of hope, excitement, success, and then disappointment and shortcomings, to a new era of accountability and detail under Coach Mike Elko. For the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, they continue yet another path to excellence in a journey that was started 3 years ago under Coach Marcus Freeman. Both teams intend on making claim to early honor and the beginnings of a path to a new goal, a goal that will see 12 teams do battle for the right to hold the highest honor. Wegman, Leonard, both return, and the brigades will clash on an August evening in Kyle Field. Well, I'm getting to my wit's end with talking season. My player tier list was fun. Breaking down every position group has been fun. But it's time for some Aggie football. Let's break down this first game versus the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Week 1, Kyle Field, Connor Wigman, Riley Leonard, both healthy. It's time. So let's talk about this game, preview the matchups, talk about the players, be honest with ourselves, and talk about each team's path to victory. Yes, we're going to talk about how Notre Dame wins this game. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you my official score prediction on the game. That's right. I'm going to give you one right now. And in my next video, I'm going to give you my full win-loss prediction on the season for Texas A&M. We're going to go game by game. But today, you're going to get game one. So guys, thanks for being here. Like and subscribe. Comment what you think is going to happen in this game. Give me your score prediction. I want to hear from you guys. It's going to be a hell of a game, man. This is a legitimate defense we're going up against. Some exciting pieces on offense, and that starts with Riley Leonard for them. It's going to be a tough task for Texas A&M, but I'll give you my thoughts about our chances. So, guys, let's get right into this thing. Oof, man, I'm like sweating with excitement from this one. It's finally time to talk about the game. Let's start with kind of setting the stage for this game. There's a lot of storylines, a lot of exciting things in this game. As I said, week 1, the first primetime slot of the season in Kyle Field with College Game Day there. That brings a lot of excitement by itself. But let's kind of talk about where these teams fit kind of nationally and kind of where they are in a very zoomed out perspective. Then we'll kind of narrow in as the video goes along. Both teams enter the season with the required talent and coaching staffs to make the 12-team playoff. And yes, first year 12-team playoff, you know that by now. That's the ultimate prize. These are both teams that have the talent to get there. And I know A&M's in a year 1, but there is a world where A&M can win 10 games this year. I'm not saying I'm predicting that, but as a ceiling, it's a playoff team. As a floor, you know, this team could go 7-5. That's possible. But on paper, both teams, possible playoff contenders. To many, this early test is going to put either team, whichever team wins, on a path to compete for that opportunity. So you win this game, you have a really good chance of making it, especially for Notre Dame. Because if Notre Dame wins this really relieves a lot of anxiety for them. They don't really have tough tests until later on the year with Louisville, USC, FSU. All those happen down the road, and Notre Dame should be able to handle those teams. This is the big roadblock for Notre Dame, especially with all the new players they're starting on the offensive line. We'll talk about that in a second. They're establishing new guard as well. A&M's establishing new guard across the board. But for Notre Dame, they lose their quarterback. They lose their All-American running back. They lose Joe Alt, their left tackle, to the NFL draft, top 5 pick. They lose their right tackle. They lose a lot of pieces on offense. And they add a new OC, Mike Denbrock, a coach we're very familiar with. Coached LSU to a Heisman quarterback campaign and first-round talent at receiver. He's going to change the game for them quite a bit. And they return one of the best defenses in the land. Absolutely a top-tier defense. They feature the reigning Bronco Nagurski Trophy winner in Xavier Watts, a safety, an opportunist, a ball hawk, a game changer, and one of the very best covermen in the game, Benjamin Morrison, at corner. They might have the most veteran defensive line at this level of football, which is like the highest tier Notre Dame that I've ever seen. They start 2 fifth-year seniors and 2 sixth-year seniors on defensive line. 3 out of those 4 guys are top 100 on draft boards right now. A legit, deep defensive line. Probably stronger on the inside than out, but just a strong defensive line. Great secondary. Deep linebacker room. Texas A&M is embarking on a new journey across the board. We know this. Defensive-minded head coach Mike Elko at the helm. Of course, we know A&M is very likely to boast a strong defense of their own, bolstered by another nationally ranking defensive line. If you're just kind of putting these D-lines in tier list, these are 2 top-tier D-lines going head-to-head in this game. Offensively, again, like Notre Dame, changing of the guard. New OC, Colin Klein, new scheme, Connor Wigman back at the helm, new top dogs in the receiver room, bringing back some running backs, bringing a lot of the same players in the offensive line, but a little bit of a shuffling going on there. New outlook across the board, a lot of similar players, familiar faces on the offense, but just a totally new philosophy. New across the board for A&M. But A&M's been reinvigorated, man. The excitement I feel right now, I feel this every year this time of year, but there's another level to it when you have a coaching change after we were kind of stuck in mud under Jimbo the last couple of years. And that's exactly what this university intended by moving off of Jimbo and getting on to Mike Elko, an up-and-comer. So really exciting stuff for both teams. But outside of these season-long implications and team developments, the game brings a multitude of storylines in itself and familiarity, quite frankly. I mean, obviously, we know about Mike Elko being the previous coach for Riley Leonard. Elko's going to know Leonard's tendencies. Leonard's been drilled against Mike Elko's defense. That works both ways. He's also coached their starting defensive end in R.J. Oben. He'll be starting for them. Really good defensive end. The game also, like I mentioned, college game day. More eyes on these 2 great institutions, on these 2 teams. The college football world will be watching at 6 p.m. on Saturday night after all the big games have concluded. This game stands alone as the primetime evening showdown on week 1. Huge game. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm excited this is happening. Historic programs, historic institutions. Let's talk about the matchups. Let's talk about Notre Dame. Let's talk about the odds. Let's start with the odds. Currently, Texas A&M is a 2.5-point favorite in this game. It opened with A&M as a 1.5-point favorite. About a month ago at the start of fall camp, Notre Dame edged ahead. But as soon as Notre Dame's left tackle went down, starting left tackle replacing Joe Alt, and the subsequent shuffle ensued, this thing swung further back into A&M's direction. So A&M is now a 2.5-point favorite. I don't know how this thing ends. It might end with A&M closer to a 3-point favorite. Who knows, though? Does it really matter? I don't know. Notre Dame finished as just one of 3 teams that finished top 10 in scoring offense and defense last year. That's a recipe for playoff success in a 12-team playoff. They do that again, they're in. They're going to win 11, 10 games, and they're in. That's just how it's going to be. But, like I said, they lose a lot on offense. Let's talk about that offense for Notre Dame. Well documented, Riley Leonard is at quarterback, and I'm not going to bury the lead here as far as what their path to success is, so I'm going to go right into that for Notre Dame. Let's talk about the O-line, because that's part of this. Right now, as it stands, it sounds like Notre Dame is going to start 3 first-time starters on this offensive line. Now, that can change before the game starts. They can still shuffle more experienced guys in. But as of right now, it looks like true freshman Anthony Knapp is going to start at left tackle. He beat out a 5th-year senior. He had a strong spring, and he looks to present the highest ceiling for Notre Dame in week 1. Now, Tosh Baker, the guy that he beat out, he's been there a long time. He's more of a prototype tackle build. Anthony Knapp is only 6'4", 290. That's a small offensive tackle. But he's been playing really well. That's still a true freshman you're starting at left tackle. Pat Coogan has the most experience at left guard, but it sounds like he got beat out by a redshirt freshman, Sam Pendleton. So it sounds like you're going to go freshman, true freshman, both first game starters in this game in Kyle Field. At center, they bring back some experience. That guy has 3 starts. At right guard, 3 starts under his belt as well. And at right tackle, another first-year starter. Center, right guard, right tackle, all redshirt sophomores. Older, more mature guys, but still only 6 starts shared between them. And if that is their configuration starting on offensive line, that offensive line starts 6 total starts combined. Now, I would not be surprised if they opt to put in the veterans 13 starts and 3 starts respectively, instead of the freshmen on the left side of the ball. That would be Tosh Baker at left tackle and Pat Coogan at left guard. Pat Coogan has 13 starts under his belt. It's kind of surprising that he got beat, or he's getting beat out right now by Sam Pendleton with no experience. It just shows the talent of those young guys, I would guess. But I wouldn't be surprised if they try to spare those young guys in this early Kyle Field environment versus that Texas A&M defensive line that we know a lot about. We'll talk briefly about A&M later in this video. I would not be surprised if they go a little bit older there, but as it stands right now, that's their starting 5. Coach Freeman did say that there's still shuffling that could happen, but that was the last 5 that their media members saw in practice. Having said that, Riley Leonard, elite scrambler. That's his best attribute. He's a run-first quarterback. I don't know if he's a run-first by intention, but his best skill set is running with the football. By reports, by him saying it, he's completely healthy. He's a full go. He is himself right now. Of course, he's coming off of a broken ankle, and that was a recovery. It kept him out half of last season, kept him out of spring, but he should be a full go for game 1. Because of that offensive line situation, because of A&M's defensive line, and because of the road environment, I think their best path for victory is for Riley Leonard to have one of his best games. He is the player that can equalize what they're giving up on that offensive line, that young offensive line. His legs, his ability to play off script, his ability to make stuff happen, scramble, improvise, that's what's going to keep Notre Dame in this game. And that's their path for moving the football. They bring back a workhorse at receiver at slot in Greathouse. He's the clear first option, I think, at receiver. Very positive reports out of camp for him and kind of the rest of this receiver room, which was a relative unknown outside of him going into camp. And it sounds like the transfer out of Clemson, Bo Collins, he's been kind of a journeyman at Clemson, never really broke through, but it sounds like he had a great camp, and he's going to be the clear wide receiver 2 in this room. Huge, agile target. He's impressed. They don't have a clear third guy. It could be grad transfer, Chris Mitchell, out of Florida International, 1,000-yard receiver. It could be Jaden Thomas, a bigger receiver who's been sparsely used by Notre Dame over the last 2 years. I don't know who their third receiver is going to be. I don't know if they clearly know yet, but those 2 guys are going to be their main workhorses, Bo Collins and Jeremiah Greathouse. Good to have a good slot receiver when you're trying to get the ball out quickly against that D-line. Look for him to be used quite a bit. Look for quick hitters. Mike Denbrock has never used a lot of tight ends in his scheme. It's usually one tight end. At LSU, it was one tight end, Mason Taylor, that was it. Notre Dame has an elite tight end, and like A&M, which is kind of weird, he's coming off of an ACL as well. And the weird thing about it is we know Donovan Green's kind of ramping up, right? Like we heard from Elko, this is going to take some time. From our camp reports, it sounds like Donovan's going to need more time to become himself. Sounds like their starting tight end, Mitchell Evans, is going to be the starter game 1, and they're expecting that out of him. Now, that could just be smoke and mirrors. They could have a whole other plan. They have a really deep and good tight end room. So, though Mike Denbrock has only really used one tight end at a time, I could see a world where he adapts to his personnel, and that accounts for a young offensive line against this D-line, and he uses multiple tight ends to help him out. I could see that happening, especially with the unproven nature of some of their receivers. I could see them leaning on multi-tight end sets, even though that's not what Mike Denbrock tends to do, but the best OCs adapt to their personnel. So look out for some multi-tight end sets. At running back, Jeremiah Love. He was running back 2 last year behind Audric Estime. Clear starter this year, solid player. Jadarian Price, running back 2. But he has Aeneas Williams right behind him, the true freshman who looked really good in camp. And the power back, Kidrick Young, another true freshman. A deep but young room at receiver, 4 viable options. They're going to lean on Love. They're going to lean on Price. And it sounds like Aeneas Williams will get some look. So like I said, on this offense, I don't know if their skill positions blow you away, but I think Riley Leonard is the guy that they're going to lean on to score them points and win this game. That is Notre Dame's path to victory. Let's talk about the other side of the ball. For Notre Dame, this is one of the best defenses in the country coming into the year. They bring in absolute established superstars, all upperclassmen, all ready to help Notre Dame make a run. It starts with the defensive line. Like I said, extremely experienced. Starting inside, Howard Cross is their nose guard. Undersized. If you didn't know Howard Cross, you've probably heard his name at least, but he's 6'1" and like 280. Very small, agile, quick, crafty player. He had 66 tackles at nose last year. That's pretty nice for a nose guard. I mean, that's damn good for a nose guard. But he's not big, he's not strong, he's not long. What he is crafty and instinctual, and he has a hell of a lot of hustle. He has a crazy motor, and they play him a lot. They lean on him a lot. They lean on him heavy in these games. He'll play a lot of snaps. But he's shifty, and he gets his work done early. He's able to just beat offensive linemen with one step. So you look at A&M's projected offensive line, it sounds like Kalinu Feu, the Utah transfer, is right now the favorite to start at center. Now, that's still a battle, and that still remains to be seen, much like Notre Dame's offensive line. But that is a matchup that would slightly worry me on one-on-one scenarios because Feu is more of a heavy-set guy. He carries a lot of weight, kind of just a bigger dude. And Howard Cross is the kind of guy that could probably get his work done early against a guy like that that's not maybe the most athletic offensive lineman. Now, I could be totally off on Feu. He could be more athletic than he seems. But that is a matchup that I would definitely keep an eye out for. Howard Cross only had 2 sacks last year, but with 66 tackles, one of his best attributes, in my opinion, from the film I've watched on him, is the fact that he's never really out of a play. I mean, you could pancake the guy, and he'll get up and just jump on the pile. Like, he is a hustler, man. He's running from behind on plays. He makes a lot of plays. It's really, really hard for a quarterback to scramble through his gap, I've noticed, because he's really able to shed once they get past that line. Really crafty player. You got to know where he is, for sure. He has a great complement next to him. At 3 tech, they bring a heavier guy, a longer guy, a bigger guy, a really stark contrast between the two. Riley Mills, long, 6'5", 300-pounder. He's a do-it-all. He can bull rush. He can get people off of him. He has pass rush moves. He's athletic. Kind of a jack of all trades. He can do anything you want from a defensive lineman. So him and Cross on the inside, that's a fearsome duo. One thing about Cross to keep an eye on, he is coming off of an offseason hamstring injury. They've been holding him out of camp sessions at times. It sounds like it's probably no big deal. He's going to be a full go for the A&M game. Their coaches did say that, okay, we've had him for 6 camps. He doesn't really need to show us much in this camp. We know who he is. We know what we have. He just needs to be in shape for this game. Keep an eye on that. Just something to watch. They're definitely stronger inside than outside, but they bring experience and maturity on the outside. RJ Oben, transfer out of Duke, another Mike Elko player, former player, 5 sacks, 17 tackles last year. Kind of just like an even 3-year stint at Duke. Consistent, similar stat lines year on year for the last 3 years. He's played 3 years there. He projects as a 6th-year senior starter. He's going to start. That's pretty much confirmed. Got to know where he is. That's the guy that can get after it. On the other side, grad transfer Jordan Botello or Botello. I don't know what these names are. Jordan Botello, poised for a breakout year at edge. He's been waiting in the wings. It's finally his time. Had a good fall camp. He's their edge guy. I think they're similar sizes. Kind of a balanced defensive end approach. One of the best defensive lines in the country overall, and it starts on the interior there with just the 6'5", 300-pound behemoth and a lot of athleticism in there. It's a quick offensive line. Now look for A&M to run a lot of gap scheme plays at some of these players just to ensure they're not getting one-on-one scenarios and running plays. Watch out for these guys on passing scenarios. We'll see. This A&M O-line will be tested for sure against this defensive line. At linebacker, and their best quality, I think, is their secondary. We'll get to that in a second, but let's go through linebacker first. Loaded with talent. Really strong, balanced linebacker room. Coaches are saying they're going to go 5 deep in this room. A lot of subbing. The one guy that's going to be on the field the most, it sounds like, is Jack Kaiser. He's been in a rotational role for his career the past couple of years, moving into full-time will linebacker. Sounds like Drake Bowen is going to compete for that middle linebacker spot, but their 2 young guys, Jalen Snead isn't that young anymore, but he's an up-and-comer. Very, very athletic player, can get after the quarterback. All these guys are kind of interchangeable, kind of how like we're thinking about the A&M linebacker room. If Torn York's on the bench, maybe a Sanford, a DeShields can step in for him. That's kind of how they're approaching their linebacker room, a lot of interchangeable players. Jalen Snead's a guy that can get after quarterbacks. He's a guy that can chase people down, just a really athletic linebacker, and they have big hopes for him. He's kind of represents an even higher ceiling to their defense if he pans out. Same thing for incoming true freshman, top 45 player, Kingston Viamu Asu. Kingston Viamu Asu. That's what I'm going with. 6'3", 235. His high school tape indicates he's a well-balanced linebacker. He can do everything. He can pass rush. He can get out and cover. He can fill the gap. He can get physical in the running game. Really good player. So just a solid, consistent approach from their linebacker room. Look for all of those guys to play. Now, their defensive front is really nice, but their secondary is even better. Like I said, Xavier Watts, the reigning, defending Nagurski Trophy winner, best defensive player in the country, per that award. Just a game changer. He has game-changing instincts. 7 interceptions last year, 3 PBUs, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery at free safety. Didn't allow a single touchdown in coverage. He's a athletic freak when it comes to like quickness and change of direction. That's his game. Very aggressive in the running game, can make an impact there. He's not perfect though. He's I guess you could call him a feast or famine kind of a player. He does occasionally over pursue. He does occasionally take bad angles. But when you're intercepting 7 picks a season, you're a game changer. So he more than makes up for that with big plays, whether it's tackles in the running game or just taking the ball away. So he's a menace. You have to know where he is. He'll bait plays. He'll hide. He's going to try to get after that ball. He's going to try to pick the ball off. That's his thing. So you got to know where he is at all times. At the other safety, some competition. Rod Hurd out of Northwestern, who racked up 73 tackles last season, has like a couple thousand snaps under his belt. Veteran. But redshirt freshman Adon Schuler has had a breakout camp, and it sounds like he might actually be the starter. Either one of those guys are great options and presents a lot of depth out there. Going to be deep, going to be strong. At corner, you've probably heard this name, Benjamin Morrison, one of the best lockdown corners in the country. He held Marvin Harrison to 3 receptions and 32 yards in their game versus Ohio State last year. 6 picks 2 years ago, 3 picks last year, but 13 total pass breaks up last year, which was more than he had his freshman year. He's all over the place. This is a guy that I'm really interested to see match up against Noah Thomas, because Noah Thomas has something that no player can make up for, and that's 6'6" height with athleticism. Very interested to see that matchup. I want to see what they do with Benjamin Morrison. Really, really scary player. And it sounds like Christian Gray will be the starter at the other corner. And they have some young guys. Leonard Moore's a young and up-and-comer that they're very complimentary of. They have depth everywhere. Quality depth. The next wave is there for Notre Dame. They develop players with the best of them in the country. This defense is absolutely legit. So you guys know my feeling about A&M. You've been listening to me talk about A&M for the last couple of weeks. I'll give you the cliff notes real quick. Since we just talked about their defense, we'll talk about A&M's offense, and then we'll get into that matchup. Then we'll flip it. For A&M, Connor Wigman is the ceiling and the floor of this offense, in my opinion. You get a good Connor Wigman. He's fully healthy. He's fully confident. He's himself. Your offense is going to be all right. Now, the difference between the offense being all right and really good or even elite, I think is going to come from offensive line play. Offensive line for the past 4 years has been bad for A&M. We know this. I've talked about it. You've thought about it. You've probably cried about it. I know I have. It has to improve. And under Coach under Coach Adam Cushing, also out of Duke, previously from Northwestern, he's had a ton of All-Americans, sent people to the draft, a different approach from Steve Adazio, who was been regarded as a failure as A&M's previous offensive line coach. We're hoping that voice, that more tactical and eye-to-eye, even-keeled approach to this offensive line helps things out. We're also helping the shuffling they're doing on the offensive line, moving last year's right tackle Chase Basantis to left guard, his natural position. He's been a camp standout there. We hope that bolsters the left side. At left tackle, you have team captain Trey Zune, a veteran, just a solid piece, a godsend for a team. You have a strong team captain like left tackle. You're feeling pretty good. But 2 guys don't make up an offensive line, and center to right is where all the question marks are. The good thing is a bunch of experience in this offensive line, and it wasn't all good experience, but at least they've been there. The one player that seems like has to start on that right side is our Reed Adams. Since spring, he's been a standout. People have talked about him, players, coaches, insiders. Our Reed Adams, the transfer out of Kansas, redshirt junior, he has to start. It'll probably be at right tackle, but there's still enough time where things can change. He can move to right guard. Our at right tackle, Mark Naboo at right guard, Kulinu Feyu, the Utah transfer I mentioned earlier, starting at center. That's probably your starting 5 at offensive line, but things can change. So how does that fare against that defense? Like I said, that's a very athletic interior front they have on that defensive line. So it's going to be on Colin Klein to scheme things up, to really work around those 2 DTs and get these players in open space. Gap scheme, gap scheme, gap scheme over the zone blocking scheme from last year. Look, these are some of the most physical offensive linemen you can see in the country. You have the size. In most cases, you have the athleticism. I don't know if Naboo and Fayu are the most athletic offensive linemen, but damn, they're big and they're powerful and they're prototype interior guys. They have NFL size. At right tackle, you give up some length and height with Armaj Reed Adams, but he's not small. He's 6'5", 315, 330, somewhere in there. I've seen different numbers there. You don't feel bad about that at all. You have those two behemoths, those textbook bookends in Fothery and Crownover, but right now it doesn't sound like they're trending to start, so you're going to start the 6'5" guy on the right. I think he's pretty big and athletic and strong. I think he can handle his own there, but I'm really looking at those two guys on the right handling Cross and Riley. So like I said, elite DB room for Notre Dame. A big question mark kind of towards the A&M receiver group. If you're a Notre Dame fan in here, how we feel about this receiver room is we've seen really good play from 3 of our top 4 receivers, only in spurts. We would have wished we had consistency from them before, but we've never had it, whether it's by injury with Noah Thomas suffering a couple of injuries last year, also dealing with a death in the family last year. Really up and down year for Noah Thomas. At his best, he's a red zone menace at 6'6" and athletic for that size. At best, he's a wide receiver 1, and I thought it was very clear in spring that this team wants Noah Thomas to be the main receiver in this room. So look for him to garner most of the attention from that elite backfield. Noah Thomas is going to be a weapon for this team, but outside of that, Moose Muhammad has shown signs of superstardom, but then disappeared for games. Ja'Day Walker really came on strong at the end of last season, and he kind of projects as your second most likely receiver to be a really good player for this team. But we did see a lull in the middle of the season last year where he dealt with some assignment and drop issues. It sounds like that's been alleviated this camp for Ja'Day. And then you have the transfer Cyrus Allen out of La Tech, who tends to be a slot build, smaller guy, but averaged 20 yards per catch last year, 700-yard season. He could be a main piece as your third or fourth option. So those are the 4 main receivers you're going to see for A&M going up against that elite secondary. Now, I think they'll have the upper hand in that matchup. I think that's pretty safe to say. But Connor Wigman's a really good quarterback. He can dime, he can throw people open, and that's what we're looking at to win this game and move the ball down the field. That, and he just needs protection. I don't think he's as fast as Riley Leonard, but he's definitely fast. He's a dual threat. Doesn't like to run as much as Riley, but he can run and improvise. But what he's really good at is sensing pressure, sensing the blitz, seeing it before it's on top of him, and delivering an accurate ball under that pressure. He was one of the most pressured quarterbacks in college football every time he started for A&M. But he's also one of the best performing quarterbacks under pressure in the country, if not the best. To do what he did under the pressure he's been in throughout his short 8-start career, it's pretty remarkable. So if he gets even average to good offensive line play, he's in a wheel and deal. But like I said, this is a legit secondary and a legit defensive front. So will A&M have trouble moving the ball? I don't know. Probably. I don't know if anybody's scoring 30 in this game, but if anybody does score 30, that probably means they win. Can A&M do that? We'll have to see. And I'll tell you what I think at the end of this video. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, when A&M's on defense and they're on offense, I kind of mentioned it earlier, I think this D-line can get all over this young, inexperienced offensive line, especially on the road. We remember last year, Alabama's offensive line. Pretty veteran offensive line last year. 3 false starts in a row at one point in that game. A&M got after the quarterback in that game, and they were able to win because they discovered they could just throw the ball at our corners, and our corners couldn't do anything about it. A&M addressed this in the transfer portal. Now, it seems like A&M might have one of the better defensive back rooms that we've seen in recent history, thanks to Bryce Anderson, now with these new players, able to move back to his natural position of safety. Dalton Brooks, now a year into the program, or in A&M, new program now under Coach Elko, who's a DB coach in his own right, one of the best in the country, I'll add. He's at safety too. That's a really, really good safety duo. Maybe not what they have in Watts, but I am really excited about the potential of that safety duo. I don't see why A&M couldn't be as good in the safety realm as Notre Dame by year's end. I'm not even blowing smoke here. A&M's safety room has been complimented since Elko got here, and I think it's going to be legit, guys. I really do. At corner, maybe not as high-end as safety for A&M, but much better than last year. You're going to look at Will Lee, likely starter. You're going to look at Tyreek Chappelle, likely nickel starter, and probably Des Ricks, maybe BJ Mays, maybe Javen Thomas at that other corner. And Javen Thomas is one of the guys that struggled last year, but he was a true freshman being asked to do more than he was probably capable of. This DB room is probably going to have the upper hand over this receiver room for Notre Dame. I really think that's the case. And it's a veteran DB room, a bunch of upperclassmen out there. The youngest guy you might see start is Des Ricks, and he's a 5-star talent who spent a year at Alabama. So much like the other side of the ball, where their defensive line might have the upper hand on our offensive line, our defensive line will absolutely have the upper hand on their offensive line. And the discrepancy might be even greater, and I think it will be. I think A&M's defensive line that features maybe 3 top 2 rounders on it, maybe 4 if DJ Hicks develops, is going to be a menace on a young, promising, but very, very young offensive line. I have no doubt that that offensive line group that they trot out now will look totally different by year's end and especially next year. But the youth factor alone makes it a nearly impossible task for them to be at their best on the road versus this defensive line. Nick Scorton, 10 sacks, led the Big Ten in sacks last year. He's starting at edge for Texas A&M. Shamar Turner could be in the NFL right now, but he wanted to show that he had another gear to his game this year. He's back, starting at 3 tech, most likely. At the other defensive end, strong side defensive end, whatever you want to call it, Shamar Stewart. He might have the highest ceiling in the room. We saw time and time again last year, running around the backfield, running like his pants were on fire, getting better throughout the course of the year. 6'5", like 290. Absolute freak beast. And then it knows it's going to be Albert Regis, the veteran. It's going to be the young up-and-comer DJ Hicks. You know, maybe not the biggest nose, but look, they're starting Howard Cross, and they feel pretty damn good about it. This defensive line is really good. It's really deep. You bring in a senior, former team captain at UCF in Josh Celisar that can play anywhere. You bring in a veteran Big Ten starter in Rodas Johnson, who's in the backup on the inside. You have the leader in sacks for the MAC coming off the bench for Texas A&M as an edge rusher in Cassius Howell. You have our up-and-comer in Rylan Kennedy, who the coaches have just complimented this whole fall camp. And he looks, to quote Jay Bateman, like $1 million right now. He's put on weight and muscle. He looks legit. And then you still have a stable of guys behind that. You still have Malik Silla. You still have Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy. You have a bunch of dudes that you could go to in this defensive line. But make no mistake, Mike Elko is going to lean on his big dogs. He's going to have the Shamars and Scorton out there more often than not. But if A&M gets them in passing scenarios, ooh boy, get your popcorn ready, man, because he's going to draw it up, and he's going to put some really athletic players out there to get after Riley Leonard. Of course, the most important player on this defense might be the middle linebacker, Torin York. Now a sophomore, freshman all-SEC player last year, complimented as a team leader. He got team captain as a sophomore, voted by the team. He's that kind of a leader. But more than that, he's a coach on the field, essentially. And now at the helmet comms, even more so. He gets players aligned. He's disciplined in his gap discipline. He's in the right place at the right time. He doesn't over-pursue. Just a steady heartbeat in the middle of this defense that makes everybody around him better. And then at outside linebacker, yeah, you lost Edgerrin Cooper, but you bring in 2 really promising talents at will linebacker in Scooby Williams out of Florida, former high 4-star talent, and you bring in Solomon DeShields, the second lowest missed tackle rate in the country last year. Those guys are all going to shuffle around, but look for Torin York to be out on the field the most. I think Scooby Williams starts, but it still remains to be seen. Oh, and Damian Sanford's there. Another up-and-comer player that's going to play this year and be in that rotation. So they can all move around. If he's not starting on one side, he'll start on the other side, or he'll come off the bench on the other side. They can both back up Torian. They can both back up the Will. We've had really, really good reports from this linebacker room coming out of camp. And, you know, that was one of the areas of concern, losing Edgerrin Cooper, such a great player. But I don't know if it's as good as last year, but Torian's a year older, and you got more depth now. Could be a really, really good room for A&M. So, guys, if you haven't figured out where I'm leaning in this game, I'm going to tell you my score prediction right here and now. It's happening. My first score prediction of the year. This is so exciting. I have A&M winning it. I think A&M's offensive line, defensive line discrepancy when A&M's on offense versus that defensive line is less than what they're going to be working with when they have the ball. I think A&M can overwhelm that offensive line. It they're going to overwhelm better offensive lines than what they're going to see in this game. Now, that's just one aspect of the game, but it's a damn big aspect. Like I said, if Notre Dame wins this game, it's because Riley Leonard had those wheels going, and he was running around, throwing the ball on the fly, scrambling, big plays from Riley Leonard. That is their path to victory, but I don't think it's enough. I think A&M is able to contain him with so much athleticism up front, so much speed on that defensive line, so much depth, fresh legs, good linebacker core, much improved defensive back group. That's the thing. On the other side of the ball, though, when A&M has the ball, they have to pick up this new offense. They have to at least be somewhat proficient. It can't be a huge learning curve against that defense. Points are going to be at a premium in this game, and that's why my final score prediction is 28-17 Texas A&M. I think Notre Dame has that much trouble moving the ball versus A&M. That's my pick. I look through maroon-colored lenses, but I'm sticking to it. I have the Ags with a big Week 1 win versus Notre Dame at home. I'll be at the game. If you see me, come give me a fist bump, talk about the game, whatever. I want to see you guys. So if you see me, say what's up. I'll be at College Game Day as well. Say what up. I want to see you guys. But like I said, guys, comment your thoughts on this game. I want to hear from you. And if you're a Notre Dame fan in here, thank you so much for being here. I'm not talking trash Notre Dame fans this time. I respect this matchup. I respect Notre Dame. A&M and Notre Dame share this in common. We get a lot of shit from other fan bases for different reasons. A&M needs to win to fix that. Notre Dame gets it for, I guess, jealousy reasons. I don't know. I'm not talking trash Notre Dame fans. I respect this matchup. I respect this opponent. They could very well beat us. But I just think that this A&M defensive line is just too much for this offense to function. I think this DB room is good enough for that receiver room. I just don't see it happening. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not. I'm very excited. I'm happy. I'm picking A&M, and I think a lot of people are picking A&M. That's why A&M's a 2.5-point favorite by Vegas. But guys, thanks for watching. You got my first glimpse of my 2024 predictions. The next video I put out is going to be my full win-loss prediction, and it will start with a victory in Kyle Field Week 1. Thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate you all. Gig 'em.